What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this time I'm going to be going over 5 bold predictions for this upcoming fantasy football season. This is a really fun video for me to make every single year. Last season I went 2 for 5 on my 5 bold predictions, which I think is pretty good. I predicted that Jalen Hurts would finish as the quarterback 1 overall, and I also predicted that Amon-Ra St. Brown would finish as the top 10 wide receiver. So if you followed all 5 of my predictions last season, you probably did pretty well. Just want to give some credibility to what I'm saying here, even if it seems a little bit hot takey. So, I'm not trying to be bold or over the top with any of these predictions. These are all predictions that I think are pretty far outside of what the consensus would say, but predictions that I think are actually more likely to happen than people would give them credit for. So, it'll be really fun to see how these pan out throughout the course of the season. But these are all predictions that I pretty strongly believe in and got things that I'm actually pretty strongly acting on in my drafts. So, let's get into the first one here. So starting this off here, I'm going to predict that Justin Herbert's going to finish as the quarterback 1 overall in fantasy football this season. I don't think there's any really denying that Justin Herbert's a truly elite talent from the quarterback position in the NFL. He just got paid a massive deal, 5 years, $262.5 million, making him currently the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So the NFL clearly thinks he's elite as well. And now he's going into an NFL season where he's got one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL in Kellen Moore, a guy who always runs super fast paced, super pass heavy, super high explosive, high scoring offenses. He's also got definitely the best set of weapons that he's had at any point in his career. He's got to go with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They've added Quentin Johnston. They've got Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler, Joshua Palmer's a good player. Jalen Guyton's healthy. He's got a full slate of weapons here. He's healthier than he was last season. On top of that, you've got a head coach in Brandon Staley who's more than willing to go for it on fourth down. They've got a really bad defense. This is going to be a team that's going to win the games by scoring a lot of points. They're going to put the ball in Justin Herbert's hands, and he's going to be the guy that really puts them over the top this season. So, with all that being said, I think that Justin Herbert's probably going to lead the league in pass attempts this season, or at least be top 3 in that metric, and he should be more efficient than he was last season. Last season, they were missing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for several long stretches throughout the course of the season. Justin Herbert himself was dealing with a rib injury that was really impacting his ability to throw the ball downfield, as well as run the ball. Speaking of running the ball, he also does offer a pretty underrated ability to run the ball and put yards together on the ground. Through his first 2 seasons, he had 8 rushing touchdowns for an average of 4 rushing yard touchdowns per season. He had 0 rushing touchdowns last season. I think that has a lot to do with his rib injury and them just trying to protect him. On top of that, he actually had over 300 rushing yards 2 years ago as well. That gives you a much higher rushing floor than I think people give him credit for. I think he's a little bit more than just a pocket passer. And all that being said, I think Justin Herbert has a legitimate shot to throw for 5,500 total yards this season. He could easily break the 50 touchdown mark. Obviously, those are really high-end numbers. Those would be like historic numbers. He'd be in the MVP conversation if he put those numbers together. But I really think he can do that this season, and I think he's going to have to for this Chargers team to be good. The defense is putrid. They've got the weapons to do it, and I just really think he's got a legitimate shot to finish as the quarterback 1. And he's currently being drafted as the quarterback 6 or 7 right now. He's the guy that I find myself drafting as much as possible in drafts this season, and I think that you should really target him. I think he's going to be a league winner at the quarterback position this season. My second bold prediction here is going to be that Chris Olave is going to finish as the top 5 receiver in fantasy this season. He actually finished as the 25th wide receiver last season in fantasy points per game. That was as a rookie with Andy Dalton throwing him the ball. So I think it's pretty clear that Chris Olave is already an elite performer in the NFL. He's now adding Derek Carr, or upgrading Derek Carr as his quarterback this season, who actually, believe it or not, ranked 2nd in average depth of target last season. You don't really think, most people I don't think of Derek Carr as a guy who really pushes the ball downfield, but he really did last year. He had the second most depth of, the average depth of his throws last season was 2nd in the NFL, and this coupled with Chris Olave, who finished 5th in deep targets last season, top 10 in air yards last season, it's just going to be a perfect match. Derek Carr is going to throw the ball to Chris Olave a ton. Chris Olave is a true deep threat. He's a burner. He's just an elite wide receiver. Derek Carr has shown more and more that he really does love targeting his number 1 guy. We saw Devontae Adams get a 32% target share last season. In years past, it's been Hunter Renfrow or Darren Waller. Derek Carr will throw the ball to his best player as much as he can. Chris Olave is his best wide receiver by far. He's just a really talented player. Derek Carr is a good enough quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns this season, and that's all you're really going to need with Chris Olave. Olave is probably going to have a 1,500 receiving yard season. I think he'll crack double-digit touchdowns, and you're going to have several week-winning performances from him. I think he's the kind of receiver that on any given week has a legitimate shot at a 200-yard receiving game. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Chris Olave put up 1 or 2 of those this season. He's just a stud. He got a huge upgrade at quarterback. This is going to be an offense that should be better than it was last season as well, and I'm just drafting as much Chris Olave as I can. I think that, especially given where he's being drafted, he's probably the only guy being drafted that low that has a legitimate shot to finish as the wide receiver 1 overall. I'm obviously not projecting that. In fact, I'm projecting him to be the wide receiver 8 this season. Still significantly above consensus, but I think he's got a legitimate shot to crack that top 5 this season. Moving on to the third bold prediction here, I'm going to predict that David Montgomery is going to outscore Jahmyr Gibbs in terms of fantasy points on the season. I actually think that Jahmyr Gibbs is a perfectly fine draft pick. I've got him ranked like 2 spots behind his average draft position, so I've got no problem drafting him there. He's got very clear, legitimate upside. He's a really talented player. The Lions really invested really heavily in him this offseason, but David Montgomery is just a legitimately good NFL running back. I don't think he gets much credit for the performances he put up in Chicago. He was consistently dealing with offensive lines that were awful, a team that had absolutely no passing game, so he's always going up against stacked boxes, and he just made it work. He's a guy that forces a lot of missed tackles per touch. He's actually a pretty good pass catcher. He's much better than Jamal Williams in that respect, and he's replacing Jamal Williams on a team that allowed Jamal Williams to score 17 rushing touchdowns last season. Obviously, David Montgomery is not going to score 17 rushing touchdowns this season. That would be just far too insane, far too fluky for that to happen again this season, but I think that you can have a reasonable regression here and him still be extremely relevant. I think it's very reasonable to assume that David Montgomery is going to put up over 10 total touchdowns this season. He'll probably get about 250 carries. He'll average over 4 carries, so he'll probably break 1,000 rushing yards as well. He'll probably catch 2 or 3 passes a game. I've got him projected for, I think, 35 receptions this season. He's just a much better player than Jamal Williams as well. Jamal Williams only had 12 receptions last season and finished as a top 10 running back. So if David Montgomery can be even slightly involved in the receiving game, I think that there's a very real scenario where he just actually puts up top 10 running back numbers, and that doesn't mean anything bad about Jahmyr Gibbs, especially with Jameson Williams out for the first 6 weeks. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for both of these running backs to be on the field. This team needs playmakers outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown. These two are their next best after Amon-Ra. So these guys are going to be super involved, both of them, but I think that David Montgomery is by far the better value. He's currently being drafted in like the 8th round right now, and I think he's got a legitimate shot to finish as a running back 1. I'm drafting him everywhere, and I really do think he's going to probably outscore Jahmyr Gibbs this season. Up next for my 4th bold prediction, this is one that it really kind of hurt me to put this up here, but I kind of think it's pretty reasonable that it could happen. I just think that there's a very real opportunity here that Travis Kelce doesn't finish as the tight end 1 in fantasy. Like I said, this is probably the one I'm the least comfortable with out of the 5 here, but I think that there are potentially 4 other tight ends outside of Travis Kelce that have a legitimate shot to finish as the number 1 overall, those being Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, and Kyle Pitts. Kelce's probably still going to be great this season. I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff. He is getting a little bit older at 34, so I think it's reasonable to assume a little bit of regression from last season, especially now that they've got more receivers that are more comfortable. They're not coming into this offense for the first time. Guys like Sky Moore, MVS, they should be more comfortable in this offense. But I think that there's just cases to be made for all 4 of those other guys that I mentioned. I think one of them will probably have an just excellent season and could beat Kelce out for that draft pick, or for that overall finish. For Mark Andrews, he was just the tight end 1 2 seasons ago. The Ravens have been pretty adamant that they want to be a more pass-centric team. If that happens, then you're going to see a target record for Mark Andrews' career this season. And if that happens, he could very easily outscore Travis Kelce. For Dallas Goedert, he's extremely young, extremely talented. He's a part of an Eagles team that's going to be super explosive. And the only thing that's really kept Dallas Goedert back so far in his career is his lack of touchdowns. I believe his career high is 5 receiving touchdowns on the season. If Dallas Goedert had a fluke 10-touchdown season, he could easily beat Kelce out again. TJ Hawkinson, he's a guy that could just legitimately lead the tight end position in targets this season. The Vikings are going to be an extremely pass-heavy team. Since being traded to the Minnesota Vikings, TJ Hawkinson was actually on pace to out-target Travis Kelce last season. I don't know that he'll be as efficient because obviously Patrick Mahomes is a more efficient passer of the ball than Kirk Cousins, but with that much volume, TJ Hawkinson does have a legitimate case to be the tight end 1 this season. And then Kyle Pitts, it's probably unlikely in that Falcons offense, but he's just a freak athlete. He's going to be a really good player. If Desmond Ridder shows anything at all, I think there's a real world that exists where Kyle Pitts breaks out this season. So, like I said, I think that Travis Kelce is still probably a fine draft pick, but he's not going to be the guy. He's going to be a guy that's going to really hamper your ability to win your league if he ends up not being that tight end 1. And there's just a case for all 4 of those other guys. Obviously, there's injury risk as well. I wouldn't really count this as being right if it was because Kelce got hurt. But I think that if any of these 4 guys pan out, which I think they all have a realistic opportunity to do so, then Kelce won't finish as a tight end 1. It'll make him a pretty bad draft pick in round 1. And last but not least here with our 5th bold prediction this season, I'm going to predict that Nick Chubb finishes as the running back 1 overall in fantasy this season. I think a lot of people would agree that Nick Chubb is probably the most talented pure runner of the football in the NFL. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry out his entire career. He's pretty much a lock to have over 1,500 rushing yards this season. And he's now on what should be the best offense in his entire career. Now that they've got Deshaun Watson in year 2, pretty good receiving options in Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. Their offensive line is still elite. And now there's a real argument to be made that Nick Chubb could be the best pass-catching running back on this team. They lost Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson, who both actually had some quality performances and got some touches in this offense last season. And they've pretty much only got Jerome Ford on the depth chart behind Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford's a decent little player. I think he'll probably get 6-7 touches a week, but Nick Chubb's going to get 20-plus carries. He'll be far more involved in the receiving game than he was in the past. The main thing here is that Nick Chubb's just not going to come off the field on third down or 2-minute drills every single time, and that's going to significantly raise his floor, especially from a receiving standpoint. If he can even catch 35 passes, just 2 a game, that'd be a massive improvement for Nick Chubb over his previous career high. And I think that he could also post a career high in rushing touchdowns this season. Like I said, I think this offense is going to be much better than it's been in the past. He's got a legitimate shot to run for 2,000 yards this season as well. If he could be a 5.5, 6 yard per carry guy and get 350 touches, that's certainly within the realm of possibility for him. So I think that it's very reasonable to assume that Nick Chubb's going to lead the NFL in rushing. He'll probably break 30 receptions this season. He could legitimately score 20 total touchdowns. And if all those things happen, he's just going to be the runaway running back one. He's got the talent to do it. This offense should be good enough to do it, and you don't have to pay that premium for him. He's currently being drafted as the running back 3 or 4, depending on where you're drafting. So I love drafting Nick Chubb just about everywhere. I think he's probably going to be a top 3 running back for sure this season, and the running back 1 overall upside is legitimately there, and I honestly think this is the year it happens for him. So that'll do it for my bold predictions for this upcoming fantasy football season. If you had any bold predictions that you found to be strongly egregious, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to interact with you guys and maybe have a conversation there. If you guys have any other bold predictions of your own that you want to let me know of in the comments, let me know. I'd love to see what you guys have to say there. Up next, I'll be doing a best draft pick in every round, where I'll go over the players that I'm picking most often in every single round and give you a justification as to why I think they're the best value there. If this is your first time on the channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. It really means a lot that you take the time to watch the videos. If you want more content like this, which I hope you do, we're putting out a video pretty much every single day throughout the course of the rest of the offseason. If you really want to have me on your side, helping you dominate your drafts and helping you win your league throughout the course of the season, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps show me I'm doing a good job. Really want to hit 500 subscribers as soon as possible. We're at like 468 right now, so I think we can get there. It's just been a lot of fun. If you like the video as well, please do give it a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. It really helps with the algorithm. It really helps me know that I'm doing a good job, and it really helps with everything. So yeah, I want to thank you guys so much again, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.